Say hello.
Hey girl, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? How was your Juneteenth?
It was wonderful just seeing all the black love and pride and everything. It was just good to see.
Yeah, it was fun. What did I do yesterday? Oh, well, I worked, but I took a half day for the
How
people.
for people.
Yeah. And then, yeah, it was just out and about around town, seeing what people were up to. There was a celebration down, I believe, in Lamert Park that I did not make it to, but I saw on Instagram and it looked really dope. And I see you got your dashiki today
Yes, I got
out
it
here
late
showing for the
today
people.
for the people. I didn't go out yesterday either. People were out in DC on Black Lives Matter road or whatever. I stayed inside. I did like a black LGBTQ film festival thing virtual. So that was
Oh,
kind
that's
of
cute.
cool. That was
Because it is Pride Month.
it's
That's right.
Pride.
It's
Yes,
Pride.
it's Pride.
Okay.
So that's what I did. So
That
yeah.
sounds fun. That sounds fun. Well, then we're going to get into it then because today we're going to be talking about uh,
Yes.
Disney films that, with everything going on, it's kind of hard for kids to really process exactly what's happening. So these are going to be some movies we're talking about today that you can use to open up the conversation with your kids. Now, bear in mind, neither of us has kids.
Right, we don't have kids.
We don't have kids, but there are children in our lives that we love just as much. So, the
And
conversation
I
kind
am
of
the
built
big ass
around.
kid as well.
Yes, we're both big kids. So
And
the
this episode, I know
conversation,
it's yeah, and I
yeah.
know it's drunk Disney, but this is going to be kind of a sober episode because of
Mm-hmm.
everything that's going on in the world.
Yes.
And we thought that it would be great to talk about some Disney movies for honestly for adults too, because we make things so complicated, and sometimes like these kid movies just break it down where it's just simple, some things that adults just can't seem to understand.
Yeah. And unfortunately, unlike the real world, all these movies get to have happy endings. So, you can at least kind of wrap up somewhat of the problem in a bubble and kind of toss it off at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
movie. But, we still in the real world have work to do. But again, it's to help just push the conversation and open up those doors. If you don't know how to talk to your kids about, race or prejudice or stereotyping or biases or any of the above. So one of the movies that we're going to highlight today that covers that in depth and a bunch of other things is Zootopia, which is one of my most recent favorites. I won't, it's hard to rank where it falls because it's been out for a while now, but I wouldn't call it a classic just yet. It's only been out for 4 years. So if you don't know about Zootopia, or for those of you who have never seen it, it came out in March of 2016. And the story plot is when Judy Hopps becomes the first rabbit to join the Zootopia Police Force Department, she quickly learns how tough it is to enforce the law. Determined to prove herself, Judy jumps at the opportunity to solve a mysterious case, but that means working with Nick Wilde, a wily fox, who makes her job even harder. So some tidbits about Zootopia: grossed over $1 billion worldwide, won the Academy Award for Best Animated Film, and there was a lot of themes that pulled into that movie that, to break it down, I mean, we can be here for hours to really go through it, but essentially the story starts with Judy wanting to become a cop. In this era of Zootopia, animals have evolved out of their traditional naturalistic ways, and they live in harmony now. Predators and prey, everybody gets along. They wear clothes, and they've just progressed to this really, I guess, dystopian utopia or whatever
Mm-hmm.
type of environment where everyone gets along. And Judy wants to become a cop, which is
Oh,
not a
wait, let
typical
me say
job
something
for
about that
a
too.
bunny.
I want to say
Mm-hmm.
something about that too, because I think it's interesting now, especially with the time that we're in with police brutality. And I
Mm-hmm.
love how her character, she's optimistic about being a cop. She's like, I'm going to change the world. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to get the bad people. But when she gets on the force, it's kind of just like, we don't care. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're not about to save the world. And, you know, we'll get into the other character later, but he's like, oh, so you thought you were going to be a bunny cop and like come in here and just make everything whatever great, whatever, not great. I don't want to say make it great again, because that's not the right phrase.
Right. That's not where it went.
Clearly. But you think you're, you know, optimistic. And it made me think about, you know, sometimes people, when we're talking about this whole police brutality thing, it's the system of the police force. But I always hear people saying, oh, well, I have a nice cop, I have a nice uncle cop, or I know somebody who's a cop and who's nice. Like, we're not saying that there can't be good people who are right. It's the system. And I thought it was cute how she just thought that she was going to come in and, like, you know, young and naive kind of thing. So that was cute.
Yeah, she wanted to fix things. Because bunnies traditionally in Zootopia world don't become cops. They're small, they're cute, they're, you know, too adorable, not enforcing enough, or whatever kind of stereotype you want to apply to it. So it wasn't typical to see a bunny become a police officer. So Judy was determined to change the entire narrative around that. And she became a part of the force as part of what they called the Mammal Inclusion Initiative, right? So open opportunity, call it affirmative action if you want to. So she gets assigned to, you know, the Zootopia Police Department, like one police plaza, head of everything. And, you know, no one's really excited for her to be there. They're just like, oh, God, here's this bunny cop. Okay, whatever, including you, making it fair for everyone. But they make her a meter maid. So she's already kind of like, you know, off-put. There's a big case that's going on. There's some mammals that are missing. And she wants to be in on the action, obviously. But she doesn't get a chance to do it right away until she stumbles upon some clues that get her involved into the case. And, you know, throughout the movie, she's trying to figure out exactly what's going on. And along the way, she meets Nick, who is a fox. Now, in nature, foxes and bunnies are not, you know, the best of friends. So she ultimately has her guard up already. She has these preconceived notions about what foxes are like, you know, what her parents were telling her and all that stuff. So she's already kind of not trusting him, but she needs him. She realizes, like, the world is just not the nice place that she thought it was when she moved there. So she needs his help along the way. And the two of them start to kind of uncover, or I guess for Judy, I feel like, not really for Nick, but for Judy, she starts to uncover that the world is not, her rose-colored glasses are getting taken off. Starting to see that people are not the way that she thinks they should be, or how the world is supposed to be. And she discovers, they ultimately discover that there's a plot to turn all of the predator animals savage again, to
and also that
control the crowd.
Zootopia was going to be this Zootopia, this utopia, this wonderful place, and it's like, it's far from that, you know what I mean?
Far from. Yeah. So what were some of the themes that you saw particularly poke out in Zootopia that could help parents talk to their kids about prejudice or even race? I mean, it's hard to kind of break it, to translate it from the animal kingdom to the human world, obviously, but in those, you know, same things, what were some themes that you saw?
I think one major theme that, especially that you have, the way you can break it down to your children, is just accepting people who are different from you. Like, it doesn't even have to be, yes, race, because I don't believe in, like, not acknowledging parents who are like, we don't see color in our house. No, you do see color, but just teaching your children about, you know, accepting people who are different from you. It doesn't even have to be color-wise, but just, you know, height or weight or background or just different things, because even with the sloths, like with them moving slow, that actually was the funniest part. Yeah, just accepting people who are different from you, and also, you know, what you're in your mind, what you may have thought of them, you know, and then when you actually meet them and have a conversation, just allowing yourself to be open, because, you know, with kids too, they're very, how can I say it? Like, they're concrete thinkers. It's like, what you see is what you get. So just like learning more about a person and not just judging from what you may have heard or what you may have seen. So I think that was the main one that stuck out. Yeah, that was the main one that stuck out for me.
Yeah, me too. I think it points a lot to the idea of implicit and explicit biases, like the idea that these things can be embedded in us without us even realizing it or thinking it. Like, so Judy was from a little country town, Bunnyboro or wherever it was that she was from. So she never really lived in the big city, didn't really have much experience with city life. So a lot of the things and experiences that that she's heard about were just things that her parents would tell her, things that she was taught to fear. So when she moved to Zootopia, it kind of was already embedded in her. Like, they sent her off with fox repellent. They're just like, just in case you see a fox,
right.
So like already in her mind, she had this, it was built into her that you should be afraid of a fox.
So
and
wait, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
To get real here, as a child, what are some stereotypes, maybe not that your parents embedded in you, but just from things that you've heard or, experiences, or maybe just like North and South, like that kind of thing, that when you got older and you were able to kind of venture on your own, you were like, oh, okay,
Oh gosh. It's kind of hard to, when you have to like think of it on the spot now, because I'm trying to really pull what,
like I'll say for me, being from New York, I do feel like we're very ignorant in the way we see the world.
Yes.
So being like how she was from a little town and moved to a big city, being from a big city, when people like, for example, I live in Maryland now, but if you told me like when I was younger, like teenager, that I would live in Maryland, I'm like, that is the country. No, or like when it's so crazy because, we went to school in Buffalo and it's in New York, but New York City people are just ignorant. So when I got accepted to Buffalo, I'm like, is it going to be like Buffalo? Like actual, like, is it going to be like a blizzard? Like, is it igloos? Like, what? I mean, I'm being funny. Like, I was just like, is it going to be just like Antarctica? Like, what is going to be there when I get there? And it's like, girl, it's in New York. It is in the state of New York. So I will say, being a New Yorker, I was very ignorant to other places and what to expect when I got there, for sure.
Yeah, a piece of that for sure. Like you said, growing up in New York City, you kind of live in this, metro bubble of multiculturalness. So when you go outside of that, it's like, wait, what do you mean you don't know about this? Or what do you mean you don't know about that? So it kind of warps your mind to realize that not everybody has the same experiences. People do not see a lot of the same things that you would see if you grew up there. But for me, I guess one of the biggest experiences was really opening my eye up to the African-American experience in America, specifically because my parents are immigrants. So a lot of what I had to learn about Black people in America happened through my experiences with my friends who, their family roots are embedded here. So that was something different. Like, even learning about something like Juneteenth, never heard of it before until we went to went to school in Buffalo, and they have the Juneteenth celebration every year. And I was just like, what is a Juneteenth? What is it? Is this made up? Did y'all make this up? This sounds made up. But, you know what I mean? Like, what? It's not even a real word. But
it's funny you say that. It's funny
something like that.
Yeah, because growing up in Brooklyn, I feel like I grew up with a lot of Caribbean friends, like off the bat. But my parents are from the South. They're not Caribbean. So when I went to school and I would start like listening to certain music or dancing, they would be like, girl, like, where is this coming from? Like we, they knew of it, but having those close friends who were Caribbean, like my parents would just be like, where is all of this coming from? You know what I'm saying? So they'd be like, oh child, she thinks she Caribbean now. So learning about those cultures, but I never thought about it like you said. And I think one of our other friends, Shakira, who's Jamaican, says she learned a lot about African American culture from being friends with like me. Like, you don't realize it until you're like, oh, we're all Black. But then you're like, okay, no, these things are different. I will say this, one major thing that I've learned being African American and having Caribbean friends was I love y'all parties. Like, I remember being a teenager and my friend had a backyard party, backyard bashment.
Bashment party.
All whining and everything, winding up. And I'm like, when her mom was there, I was like, you know, and she was like, girl, her mom was like, mind your waist, like, you know what I'm saying?
We had dance contests at the birthday parties. Who could walk up the best? Like, it'd be all of us 7-8-year-olds just in there, you know, so it was always just a part of the culture. It was never anything really, you know, unusual about it. But that for me was, I guess, one of those, you know, implicit things that I had thought in my mind of, like, you know, what the difference in the experiences could really be. So to kind of circle it back to Zootopia, I think that for Judy, that was one of her awakening discoveries was, you know, her preconceived notions about what foxes are or how they are was completely washed away when she met one, and, you know, they became friends, they started working together, but it was always kind of living in the back of her mind because she still kept the fox repellent on her. And I think for parents, that's a really great, you know, opening door to kind of have the conversation of, you know, what kind of thoughts do you have when, you know, you see a Black person or you see a Hispanic person, you see an Asian person, and opening up the conversation to see, because like you said, children are, you know, very concrete. It's just what they see is what it is, but they also are sponges who can absorb the things that they hear.
I was going to say that.
You know,
be careful. I think this is a great movie also for adults to be careful about what you say about, you know, different groups of people in front of children, because you're not speaking to them, but you're speaking maybe to another adult, and they're consuming what you're saying, but you're also not giving them background on what you're saying. And I've seen this happen several times before, where you might hear an adult, because kids also, they don't, you know, they haven't had enough world experience to put it together
to understand context.
And so then what I've seen happen is sometimes kids will overhear their parents say something, and then they're in public and they're like, you know, they're saying something real wild, crazy, and the parent is like, where did you learn that? You know what I'm saying?
Like, oh my God, where'd you hear that?
Oh my God, where did you hear that? And they heard you over talking to your friend on the phone, or probably saying something, you know, and now they just saying, it's like, whoa, okay, let me give you some background so you don't just go out here and just be saying craziness.
Right. Context is important, but I think that's why having those open conversations really matter. Giving kids the space, and it's also really giving them the space to explain what they see, versus us just kind of talking at them or just, you know, having a conversation for them, really seeing where their minds are, because sometimes they might not even know, or they might have notions and they're like, oh, great. So you know that this is wrong. Awesome. Let's keep talking about why it's wrong, or why, you know, you shouldn't feel that way.
And because we did have, like, even me working in education with kids, we had an open discussion with them where it was like they could just talk and the adults were not involved. And it was interesting because one boy, he said something and I had to kind of just like, but that was his thoughts. He was Latino, and he was saying, he was like, you know, I understand what's going on, but you guys should not be looting because it's going to make y'all look like the bad people. And, you know, and so it was kind of like, it was a little triggering for me. I'm not going to lie, because I was like, what? You know, but then I had to realize he's a child, and that was his, you know, honest. And I feel like with children, they have the most, you know, it's the most untainted. It's just from their, you know, you get what I'm saying? So, but it was good to just hear him say that, you know, it's going to make y'all look like the bad people even more. And I was like, okay, you know.
You know what? Because we teach children through a lens of duality, right? Good, bad, right, wrong. There's never, you know, we don't really give them a lot of gray area to explore. And I think that is sometimes what can make things feel confusing for them, because it's hard to explain the gray area. What do you mean it's okay for them to do it or do something this way? So it's kind of hard to explain the gray area to them, because it's like, but you said this is bad. Yeah, that's true. It is bad. But here's also why people might act this way or behave this way. And it doesn't make them bad people. It doesn't mean that they're wrong. Because that's just, you know, the way that society's been structured. We literally live in, you know, in these places of duality where it's either this or that. Boom. And it's just, life is just not that clear.
No, it's not.
It's not. So I think it's a fair place to really explore when you're having conversations with kids, and, you know, to even open up their mind to see that things aren't always going to be perfect. There's not always going to be a right answer. Even in Zootopia, where Judy got the press conference all wrong, you know what I mean? And she hurt Nick's feelings. That would have been a
Oh
good
yeah, but
place to
let's go back
pause.
a little bit too and explain about Nick. So she meets
Yeah.
Nick.
Yes. All right. So yeah. Oh yeah. So Nick is he's a little city hustler fox who makes his living off of selling popsicles, popsicle sticks. And, you know, he's been kind of just living this life ever since he was a little kid. He wanted to be what was it, a Cub Scout, or like in some, like a
A
Boy
Boy
Scouts and
Scout
stuff.
type of thing.
Yeah. And, you know, his mom scrimped and saved all her money to get him the little uniform so he can go to the club and be, you know, one of the boys. And he was the only predator that was going to that particular meeting. So when he went, he thought that they were going to swear him in. He was going to take the oath. And instead they tricked him and they put a muzzle on him. And they're just like, yeah. And they're just like, we would ever really trust a fox? And, you know, he's a little kid, but he's, you know, really traumatized by it. And he figured, well, you know what, if the world is only going to see me that way, and if life is always going to treat me that way, then I guess I might as well be what y'all think I am. So that's how he carried himself through life. So when he met Judy, up until that point, that was just the way that he decided to carry himself, which is, you know, the way a lot of people end up, you know, finding their paths in lives, is because of the way that people just take certain stereotypes and apply it to you. So why bother try to exceed over that when people won't even try to get to know you first? Because even she did that. She was just like, oh, shifty fox, okay.
Before she even met him, she thought he was shifty.
Mm-hmm.
When she saw him walking into the store,
Walking into the store, yep.
Shifty. And then, you know, he went in the store and he played the whole game about him going to get ice cream for his son.
His son,
he wasn't
yeah.
being shifty, but before she even knew that, she did
yes.
think he was shifty.
Yes. And that's the reason why she helped him get the popsicles, because she felt bad about thinking that he was being a shifty fox. Turns out that he was, but hey, you're not supposed to judge nobody before you get to know them. But fast forward, he helps her with the case. They become friends. They get along. And when they discover that the predators are somehow being poisoned, that's turning them savage, she delivers a press conference talking about it. Right, their primitive, savage ways. I have the actual quote that she said. So she said, "It may have something to do with biology. What I mean is, thousands of years ago, predators survived through their aggressive hunting instincts, and for whatever reason, they seem to be reverting back to their primitive, savage ways." So she's saying all of this while Nick is standing there, and she just asked him if he would, you know, apply to the police academy and be her partner. So you asked me to be your partner, but then you go and say all these things about predators just now on the news, and I am a predator. And, you know, she's just like, oh, wait, no, but I didn't mean you. Like, you're not like them. And he's like, oh, there's a them now. Like,
oh, there's
what is
a
that?
them now.
There's a
wow.
them now.
That's
and
what
that for me,
now. There's a them.
I was just like, whew, Zootopia deep. And like, you know, and that would have been a good place to pause and be like, so why was Nick so upset about what Judy said? Why was it not nice that she, you know, described predators that way and didn't think that it would hurt Nick's feeling? Or why did she think Nick would be different? You know, having those conversations about how we apply those implicit biases, explicit biases to, you know, an entire group of people. But like, if it's your one friend, oh, but you're not like them. Oh, you're not that.
And
No.
what can make it, like, how you can make it a real life example.
How you can make it a real life, yeah.
Like, even with 9/11 and, you know, the planes and everything like that, I feel like there was a narrative that, you know, people who are Muslim or people who are Middle Eastern, you know, they are a part of their terrorists, or they, you know, that's a part of their religion. And any Muslim person, you know, like, they would tell you it's one of the most peaceful religions. Like,
right.
You know, people can interpret whatever, but the rules of the Muslim religion is not to kill people and
right. That's not any of the tenets of Islam in any way, shape, or form.
They try to make it seem like, oh, this is a natural thing in their, you know, in their religion or in a Middle Eastern culture. And so, or just even with Black people,
I would say, well, you can take it right to Black people, where they use that as an excuse for slavery, where they said, you know, our bodies were conditioned and designed for manual labor. You know, they made up studies about their brain. Yeah, so it's a subservient brain, so it's only designed to do this, that, and the third. So there were many, instances of that throughout history where people took those things and applied it to entire groups of people. But there will always be well, this is my good slave. This is the one I trust. He ain't like the rest of them. Nah, if you're gonna say that this Black person is that, then you need to make it a blanket. You know what I'm saying? You can't make exclusionary choices based on how you feel. It's like, if you are white with a Black friend, you can't say these particular things about Black people and then look at your Black friend and be like, oh, but not you though.
Not you. You're not like,
That's not how it goes. Right. There's no
or
them.
You're one of the good ones.
Right. I was reading an article about that the other day about a white guy. I think he was from Boston, but he went to a predominantly white school, and what it was kind of like, living in the duality of it, because, he, in some instances, became that friend, you know what I mean? The Black friend amongst, his white peers. And it was like, there were so many times and things and, stuff that was said where they isolated him away from Black culture, where they're just like, oh, but you're cool, or or they called him an Oreo, you know what I mean? Like all those things to kind of isolate his Blackness from him personally, when no, that's exactly who I am. And Judy was doing the same thing to Nick. It's like, you can't isolate me as a predator. That is what I am. So you can't separate us and say that, well, they act this way, but I'm that way. I am that. You can't separate the two. So if you don't see me as a predator, or if you only see predators this way, then that means you see me that way. You can't ignore that part about who I am. It's the same way you say you can't not see color. You have to see me for what I am. That's how you can understand my experience.
Yeah. And I also noticed how in the movie, it also showed how in the workforce, because the Prey were kind of like little and tiny, and so it seemed like those roles, they didn't really they were kind of looked over.
Yeah.
Like, and then I thought it was cute because at the police station that the main character Judy works at, the front officer who worked at the front desk, he was more of like, even though he was a predator, he was more like fluffy,
friendly,
a little flamboyant, a little flamboyant. And
I can't remember his name, but
yeah, he was a little flamboyant, but they, they really didn't give him anything serious to do. Like, he was just the front guy.
He was just the friendly face to see, the front office.
And I noticed that as well, too, with, some of these cartoon movies where maybe the plus size person or the one that's like a little bit fluffier, they're like, the funny one, but they're not seen as like
serious.
Yeah, they're not seen as, and he even, I think, pointed to at one of the things he said about like, oh, they don't really give me much to do, or kind of just like that he himself kind of, they looked over,
they overlooked it.
Overlooked him.
Yeah, I mean, it was, they played up on that dynamic a lot, because the mayor of Zootopia was a predator. He was a lion, and his assistant mayor, who we found out was the one who was actually, planning and plotting the entire thing, was a sheep. I'm gonna say she's a sheep because she's grown. She's not a lamb. She's not a baby. But she was a lamb, but she was plotting the whole thing because, and that was the other thing about it that was interesting, was because, the mayor didn't take her seriously. He didn't know her name. He kept calling her Smellweather. Her name was Bellwether. He was really bossing her around. Her office was inside of the storage closet. So, for her, she was kind of also feeling unappreciated and, undervalued, which can sometimes come up as, this retaliating behavior where she wanted to undermine the predators because she felt as a prey so undervalued.
The underdog.
Right, the underdog of it all. And I think that speaks a lot to, when there's imbalances in society, or when people feel that things are unfair, they try to correct them in ways that they feel, even the playing field. It might not have been fair the way she did it, but in her mind, that was her recuperating whatever, reparation she felt she needed, she deserved. And it's kind of, again, it's a complicated thing to explain to kids, because in the movie they make it good and bad, right? She's bad because she did this, and they're good because they did that. But it's like, if you really took it from her perspective, we don't know why she feels that way. We don't even know how they become so civilized with each other, right? They never explain how everybody gets along. They just say, once upon a time we were savage, and now we live in harmony.
So
Yay,
that's my
Zootopia.
question for you too. Like in the climate that we're in right now, do
Mm-hmm.
you think that there could be a utopia, of we all get along and everyone lives together in harmony despite our differences?
Not in my lifetime. Not in my lifetime. I don't think I'll see it. And the only reason I say that is because I feel like there's what's missing is an acknowledgement of wrongdoing, particularly of one group of people to others, because it's multiple people who have been marginalized and disenfranchised by racism and white supremacy as a whole. And I think that there's a lot of pieces that need to be dismantled. And a big problem of it, and some people might not like the way I say it, whatever, but I feel a big issue around it is that white people take it personally. When you talk about a system that they benefited from, they feel the effect of it
Yeah.
personally. And it's like, you have to remove yourself out of the situation and look at it, like you were saying, from the systemic point of it. We're talking about the entire thing. You're a part of it.
Not talking about you as a
Not
person.
you, right? Like not you
Yeah.
specifically. And I think that that's a big piece of it, is when people are able to remove themselves out of the situation personally and really take a big, bird's eye view of it, we'll be able to kind of progressively move forward. Because until then, everyone's gonna, well, my ancestors and I didn't do that. And I know, we know, but you have to acknowledge that it is a system that you benefit from, a system that has continuously put you on the forefront of, the winner's circle to benefit throughout. So even if, you're not specifically doing something, you're still a part of the system. It's like, that's the piece of it that people are refusing to acknowledge.
It's true, and it's heartbreaking because, like you said, with movies like this, like Zootopia, it all ends well, right? Always, it always ends
it
well.
always ends well.
The good guys always win, whoever that may be.
The good people.
But I think that even when we had a conversation with our students, it broke my heart to kind of have to, as a child, when you start to have that awakening that the world ain't shit. It breaks my heart as an adult that you have to even do that. That you even have to, because children should be able to be children.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? They should be able to live in a world where they're not worried about, but they're seeing these things on TV and you can't protect them from it, and they're afraid. So I think Zootopia is a good movie for children and adults sometimes, like you said, because sometimes you have to escape to a fake reality world.
Fake reality to see how it compares to what's happening. And I think, a big part of the conversation too has to deal with privilege of the knowledge, right? The things that you haven't had to think about, the things that you haven't had to experience. And again, it probably goes all back to that duality thing that we're talking about of, it's either you're privileged or you're oppressed. And people think that that's the only two, sides of it. And it's like, it's not. Because people say, well, I'm not privileged. I was poor and I, struggled through this and my parents. We understand. Privilege is not always about what you went through. It's about what you did not have to go through. And those are the things that people miss, because even in our own experiences, we're privileged in many ways. You know what I mean? Like, I had both my parents growing up. That's a privilege in and of itself that a lot of people don't get to have. You know what I mean? It's like, so that experience for me ultimately puts me in a different space than other people to know, that family dynamic. It's obviously much different than white privilege, but it exists on many different levels. So for, I think, like I was saying before, for white people to not acknowledge that they have a privilege in that is a big part of why we ain't gonna have no Zootopia. Not no time soon. No.
Yeah, I agree that it won't. I won't say it will. It won't be a Zootopia, but I do feel like what's happening now is that it's just like I do feel like we're not letting up, and it's like I love what I'm seeing now is like we're not also gonna let white people believe that everything is all peaches and cream either.
Right.
Like, because also I think even with the movie, assuming that everything is a Zootopia or a utopia and not acknowledging the real issue is why people were faking and walking around and acting like, oh, Zootopia, you read about this beautiful city, but when you get there, you're like, oh, y'all are faking.
Right. Which Nick kind of pointed out to Judy in the beginning. He was like, oh, so you thought you were going to come here, change the world, that Zootopia was going to be this amazing place. And it turns out not to be what you thought it was. Because it's, Judy kind of was living in that fantasy. And it's like, well, sorry to burst your bubble, but that's not how life is for everyone here. Everyone is not successful in Zootopia. Because I think that was their motto, was that in Zootopia, you can be anything.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Anybody can be anything. That was their motto. And he's like, yeah, that's not the case for everybody. Everybody cannot be everything. He's like, I am a fox. No one will let me be anything because they don't trust me, or they look at me and they automatically assume they know what I'm about. So no, it doesn't work that way. You're a bunny cop only because they had to let you be one, not because anybody actually thought you could be one. You know what I mean? Why do you think they made you a meter maid? So all of those things, that we have to unlearn about each other, or even just have the conversation about why they exist in the first place, is the first step to breaking it
and
all
that's
down.
a privilege that she had too, because she was naive to a lot of things.
Yeah.
It's so funny because I realized that I was sheltered. So I was like,
yeah,
oh,
me too.
sheltered.
Me too.
Even though I grew up in the inner city, I was sheltered. I was sheltered and naive about a lot of things, even that was going on in my own neighborhood right outside. I was naive. I was green, like to the point where they would be like, girl, you gotta watch Laura, because somebody would just tell her anything and she'd be like,
and she'll go with, right? They'll probably kidnap you off the street.
Right? I know your mom. Like, really? You do? Okay.
Right.
You gonna take me to my mom? Like, no, girl.
Right.
No, so that is a privilege though, because you have that love and that cultivation in order to be naive.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because some parents from an early age, because they're so stressed out, they don't even have the ability to protect their kids from certain things. They're like,
from seeing things. Right,
from experience at an early age. My parents, they never, if they were going through a hard time, they never told me or let me see them going through a hard time.
Yeah, it's true. And it, that's the bubble of parenthood, that, you want to protect your kids for as long as possible, keep them as innocent as you can for as long as possible. And I feel like I was very probably up until I went away to college. Because everything was very structured for me. Like I said, my parents, came to this country. For them, it was like, let us just build. We just want to, make it, get our little house in the suburb. They did, and happily ever after, call it. You know what I mean? They're still in that house right now. So, for them, that was fairy tale wrap, done. We're finished. But, now, like you were saying, seeing everything that's happening, it's an unraveling of the way that I've perceived life growing up, and the way that I've also grew up thinking success was attained in this country, and recognizing that the path is not equal for everyone. The road is not paved for all people. And it's very, unsettling to learn that, because you feel like, well, I've seen these people do it. Why isn't it not the same? It should be. And I think that that's the conversation that parents need to have with their kids, to recognize, especially if you are white, specifically for white parents, to teach your kids that, the world has been set up to benefit them in a way that it hasn't benefited other people. And they have to understand that it's an advantage that it was given to them just strictly by birth. You didn't earn anything. You didn't earn it. So, and that's a difficult conversation for some people to grapple with. It's like, this whole unlearning of the way that life has been set up. So, and for Black kids to recognize, this is how life, the cards were stacked up against you from birth. So, really being able to dismantle that.
10 out of 10. I give it 10 out of 10.
I do too. I mean, I think they missed the mark on some things. Sure.
It was a great movie. So check it out if you haven't. Get the
It's on Disney Plus. It's a great,
and
it's cute. Yeah, it's cute. Even for, like you're saying, even for grown-ups, just to watch, because we picked up on all the things. Kids are going to look at the surface level, point of be nice, don't be a bully, don't pick on people, you shouldn't judge people before you really know them. That's for them. The bigger arc of everything that we were talking about is for adults. So yes, y'all should watch Zootopia and have conversations with the kids.
Yes, pause it and have conversations. So before we wrap up though, what are some honorable mention movies that you wanted to mention?
Yes. So obviously Zootopia is an animated feature, so I fare it good for kids somewhere between like 7 and 10 or even 11.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for you to watch with your kids. But if you have older kids, teenagers, preteens who think they're too cool for the baby movies, some other good films that talk about race and prejudice and bias are Red Tails, which is based on, all of these are almost based on true stories. The Color of Friendship, love that film. Oh, so good. And that one is set back in the 90s during South African apartheid, so that's a great film to watch, to really have those conversations about your kids, that this is not new, right? This movie was set way back here when. So, you know, really kind of timelining how long things have really been unfair. Remember the Titans? God love Zell. God loves Zell. Although there's a smidge of white saviorism in there, so we're gonna pause on that. But smidge. Yeah. And we can talk about that in another video. And then Ruby Bridges, which I know I've seen a lot of people posting about her lately because I believe she's only 65 right now, which speaks to the timing of the fact that like this woman was the first to integrate her school in Louisiana, and she's only 65. Like she just got up into the senior citizenship list.
So long ago it wasn't.
And people want to act like it's been hundreds of years that, oh, we'll get over it. It's been so long. It really hasn't. It's been a generation. A generation. That's about it.
Yep.
So check out those films with your kids. If y'all don't have Disney Plus, I think they give you a 7-day trial. So watch as much movies as you can for your 7-day free trial.
Home, stuff is still slowly opening up. So
right.
This is the perfect time to watch these movies with your kids.
Yes.
The little ones, the teenage ones, especially because they're going into, I watched Color of Friendship when I was a teenager. And when that white girl called her Akata, or what did she call her?
A Kaffir.
A Kaffir? I thought it was a Kata. That's what they call African American. I'm sorry. A Kaffir. She said Kaffir. And when I never even heard that, but when she went home,
it sounded offensive.
Dad,
yeah.
When she went home and told her dad, he said, "What?" So it's
she didn't really call. She was explaining the words. And when she told her parents, they thought that she called her that, and she's like, "I didn't call her that. I was telling her that that's what it is."
Yes,
but even
watch it, but it's a great movie.
Yeah, it's a good movie. It again has happy ending, because it's a Disney film and it just has to have a happy ending. But it does talk into the conversation, especially if you are a white person who has Black friends. It's a great movie to watch to kind of break down the biases of how you see Black people, because they assumed that because she was from South Africa, she was going to be Black. And she assumed that because the father was a politician, that the family was going to be white. So it was a what they call a student exchange program?
Yes.
Yeah, student exchange. So it's a really great film to talk about, bias, right? Preconceived ideas and notions about people. So just check those out, y'all, and be safe if you're going outside. If your state is opening up, take all your precautions, wear your mask, stay your 6 feet.
Next episode, I will be getting drunk, but I feel like it's a sober episode because
I know we had to have
everything going on in the world. So we will see y'all next time.
Yes, bye.